To start off with, I have two requests from all of you. One, if you could just right click on your name to the right, put down your name, full name, and the name of your organization as well. That will help us understand the nature of questions that all of you are asking, and also answer the questions as and when they come up. But this will also help us understand if we're running out of time, if we're unable to answer any questions at this point of time, it will just help us come back to you later on. So if I could request you all to just put in your name followed by the name of your organization, just similar to how I have done it, or how Rima or Ramesh sir here have done it. Secondly, if you have any questions or if you have any perspectives, also drawing from your experience so far, from your journey of registering and also trying to list on Social Stock Exchange, any comment, any perspective, any question, just feel free to leave them, and drop them into the chat box over here. But to start off with, those are just two of my requests. To introduce myself, I am Lekhya. I currently anchor the Capital for Impact practice area at Sattva Knowledge Institute, which is SKI for short. While I'm sure that a lot of you here are friends of Sattva and SKI and know about us already, but for those who don't, Sattva is a social impact consulting firm, and we're driven by our mission to end poverty in our lifetime. To make this happen, we work with a wide range of stakeholders. Be it corporations, philanthropists, foundations, nonprofits, and also for-profit social purpose organizations. And every day we aim to develop scalable solutions for sustainable social impact, as well as maximize the social return on their financial and non-financial investments as well. We offer end-to-end support covering needs assessment, research, program design, to monitoring and evaluation. In 2022, we at Sattva we launched a very exciting milestone in our journey and in the impact ecosystem as well, called Sattva Knowledge Institute. And our aim at Sattva Knowledge Institute is to curate and provide evidence-backed, rigorous knowledge as a tool to enable stakeholders to make their decisions across various sectors. We have 6 practice areas so far. We have health, agriculture, livelihoods, and education, and we have 2 cross-cutting practice areas as well, that's digital platforms and capital for impact. Since our launch in 2022, we have published 100 products with full public access. We invite you to look through some of our products so far, ranging all the way from primers to long form written content, perspectives, and podcasts. The practice area that I lead, which is called Capital for Impact, we aim to draw from Sattva's decade-long experience of working in the private philanthropic space and combining it with the ground-up research-driven insights to influence, shift, intent, and align different types of philanthropic capital towards the most key developmental gaps and also enable effective solutions. That's a little bit about Sattva, the Capital for Impact team, and everything. But all in all, I'm super thrilled, and well, I'm also personally very happy to have all the 5 speakers here with us today, who have accomplished and lived through the journey of listing Unnati on Social Stock Exchange. For those of you who have joined once again, I request you all to ensure that you're mentioning your name as well as the name of your organization. And secondly, if you have any questions or any perspectives, any comments, feel free to just drop them in the chat box over here. To introduce all the speakers over here today, we have Mr. Raymond D'Souza, who is the Chief General Manager and presently heading the off-farm development department in NABARD. He has over 3.5 decades years of experience in the field of agriculture and rural development. He's also NABARD's nominee on SEBI Social Stock Exchange Advisory Committee, as well as on NEC Social Stock Exchange as well. We also have Rima here with us, who is a Vice President at Unitus and oversees structured credit solutions to social impact enterprises. Rima has about 13+ years of experience with Bank of Baroda and carries very deep sectoral knowledge on various banking operations and also potent networks across geographies and functions. We also have Richa over here today, who is a partner in capital markets practice at Trilegal, who is who actually worked with Unnati very closely on all the legal and compliance related aspects, on Social Stock Exchange. Next, we have Surya sir over here, who's a chartered accountant with about 35 years of experience and has held CFO roles for over 2 decades in various IT and product and services organizations. And lastly, we have Ramesh sir over here, who is the CEO of Swami Group of Companies and director of Unnati Foundation, the force behind getting Unnati listed on Social Stock Exchange. To start off with, just laying down some context before I hand it over to our speakers to come in as well and share their experiences of registering and listing on Social Stock Exchange. As we all know, the civil society and the for-profits in India are working tirelessly to bring about transformational change, where they're also trying to ensure that the growth and the opportunities are more fairly distributed across communities and regions. But at the same time, simultaneously, there has been a rapid growth of the philanthropic community as well, both in terms in the increase in the amount of private sector funding, which according to some estimation totals about 60K crore if we consider the year of 2022. But as well as in the terms of diversification of these instruments, the approaches and the practices of philanthropy as well. We're now seeing foundations and organizations investing and working in high need underserved areas, which includes both geographically and sectorally, and also making their giving more impact oriented and collaborative led to ensure that there is large scale population level systemic change. As we all know, the pandemic has also triggered a rise in collaboration among civil society actors, funders, and the government to create and tackle solutions. But while we're talking about philanthropy in India seeking more structure and the informed giving, they're also engaging in newer forms of impact investments such as retail funding, venture philanthropy, innovative finance to tap into different types of sources of funding to ensure long-term impact. As we all know, social stock exchange is a huge potential in India to bring together all the non-profits, the for-profit social purpose organizations with these catalytic donors and the investors that I'm talking about who are willing to take these bigger risks and facilitate funding and growth into the sector. And here we're not only talking about the foundations, we're also talking about the PEVC firms who also channelize 66,000 crores of funding as well towards for-profit enterprises as well. We at SKI have tried to understand and study the social stock exchange ecosystem as well, and which is also the reason why we are over here today. So we could take it a step further and talk about and understand and really deep dive into what happens in each of the steps, that a nonprofit takes to register and list on social stock exchange. To start off with, what I would love, Ramesh sir, is for you to come in and talk about what makes social stock exchange a potential game changer, according to you, for driving social impact. In what ways do you also see SSC in India significantly enhancing the efficiency within the impact ecosystem? And while you're covering these 2 points, it would be great if you could also talk about why Unnati decided to also register and list on social stock exchange as well. I'm just going to hand it over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Lekhya. Thank you so much. And, my welcome to Rima ji, Richa, Raymond sir, Surya, and so many other NGO partners of ours, who are there on the webinar. So it is a very epic thing which has happened for us as Unnati, and we all know that somewhere around July 2019, the FM finance minister announced about the stock exchange, right? The social stock exchange as an initiative, and the important aspect was that this social stock exchange was an initiative of the central government and regulated by SEBI, which is a very, very key element in the whole journey of this. And when that happened, it is also, like you said, there are so many platforms for funding. But in my own opinion, in the days to come, years to come, it may not happen tomorrow, it will happen after a few years. SSC could become a very, very big source of fundraising for the NGO, and also a very big marketplace where donors could come and support NGOs, an initiative which is in a regulated form, which is very, very critical. So this is one of the key aspects of this SSC. Right now, coming to how is our SSC different from so many? There are some 7 countries which started SSC, and believe me, today only 4 of them are there. I think some 3 of them are there. Some UK, Canada, Singapore, Jamaica kind of people, and most of the others have failed. Uh, why it has failed is not an issue. It was only a listing platform. But what is different is in India, it is different. And that point is in India, it is directly part of the commercial stock exchange. I think it's a very, very big thing. It's a very, very big thing. It's like recognizing NGO as a company who adds huge value to the society, to the country, right? It's a very, very big thing to be making them part of the commercial stock exchange, number one. The number two is, of course, as I said, it is regulated by one of the biggest bodies, the SEBI is regulating it. It automatically, once you are in that segment of SEBI, you are already clearly talking about financial audit. It's already there. What is the specialty of SSC, which is important for all of us to understand is that there is a social audit which has become compulsory. Social audit is not ordinary. See, there is a gray area of outcome, impact. These questions will be asked, which I'm sure a lot of people will talk about it. But the fact that a compulsory social audit is there, and the SS and all the people in the SSC must give once they are listed, which is a very big aspect of it. When you look at my own understanding and why we went into this, I looked at SSC as a very important platform covering 3 pillars. One, the aspect of transparency. 2, the aspect of governance. 3, the aspect of outcome and social impact. There are so many NGO friends here. We might have done 20 years of service, 30 years of service. We walk into a donor's place. We walk into some place. The questions asked are generally about governance standards, impact. How do we know everything is proper? How do we, even after 20 years, 30 years, we still have to answer that question on a daily basis. So we feel, in my own opinion, this platform, when it matures, when it becomes better and better, it should become something like you are there, it's done, it's taken care. It's a very important element for. This is my thought process when I talked about thought of SSC and said we should be there. That was one of the things. Let me go into the. I'm trying to cover the highlights of every aspect of it so that it's easy for people to ask questions on a later time. So, what is a zero coupon? So we have listed our zero coupon, zero principal instrument. I want to underline the word instrument. It is not a bond. It is an instrument. It is not a kind of a. It is a kind of a security. It is not kind of a. It doesn't come under the shares kind of a thing. It is not tradable. You cannot trade. You cannot declare dividends. The value of a zero coupon, zero principal instrument becomes zero the moment it is delivered and it is over. So it is almost like a donation. It has to be treated as a donation by somebody who is buying this instrument. It is in a demat form. It is our own list size is the minimum list size ordered by the regulation authorities is 1 crore. That is the list size. We have gone for 2 crores. The minimum subscription possible is, minimum subscription for it to go through is 75%. So when you take 1 crore, it is 75 lakhs. When you take 2 crores, it is 1.5 lakhs. So we have to raise 1.5 lakhs in this, and 1.5 crores. And the minimum amount which any donor can give today is 2 lakhs. So we have kept 2 lakhs and multiples of 50,000 thereon. So this is what we have done in our proposal. It is today, if you see minimum is 2 lakhs, you don't get ATG benefit. CSR foundations cannot participate. So there are a lot of restrictions. And how do we cope up with all these restrictions and all that? Will probably a lot of questions on those things will come up in the due course, right? So those are there. How can an SSC benefit an NGO, right? This is a very tricky question. Today, if you look at it, why should I be in the SSC? You know, a question can come from from so many NGOs. Why should I be there? Too many regulations to follow. I have to spend a lot of money on that. If I have to go for listing, forget Unnati. We were very lucky. We had a Trilegal, we had Unitus who did it pro bono. Otherwise, it would have cost you anywhere between 4% to 7% of the cost, a minimum of somewhere around 10 lakh or rupees if you have to go for listing. That much of amount of work and mind space, etc., goes in. So it's a costly thing. And then once you are listed, it is asking for so many disclosures and so many commitments from your side that you have a lot to be prepared with, right? So there are issues of that nature. So an NGO can ask, why should I be there? You know, the idea is we are all together building an ecosystem. And if all our vision talks about these 3 pillars of transparency, if it talks about governance, if it talks about social impact outcome kind of thing, if all of us believe in that, then this platform can become a very strong platform. Same way, if the government, if the entire support mechanism execute their duties properly, then again, this platform can become a great power platform for donors to step in and not think why I should give this or think why is this organization good. That question, that point will not come. You know, one of the meetings I was hearing Mr. Nitin Kamath of Zaroda talk about it. He says, we don't know where the money is going. We don't know what is happening. So this is an ecosystem which we have to build. So the ecosystem has to be built by all of us. It cannot be, it's not plucked and brought here. It has to be built by all of us. So the next point is, yes, it needs a lot of capacity building. And capacity building, I'm not talking of only the NGOs. Many people will talk of NGOs not being prepared. A donor is not prepared. He does not know. He is going to question us, oh, ATG is not there, that is not. So they are going to be questioning a lot of things. Why I should, what happens to my money, how it becomes. So there is a lot of capacity building which has to happen across the board, right? Across the board, and so many agencies are involved. The kind of legal agreements when you go for listing is so huge. How is the capacity building team going to make sure that it becomes easier? The disclosures are becoming easier. We had a lot of simplification of documents, right? Luckily, we had such good people, and the support from the exchanges, the support from the ecosystem for us when we started it was so brilliant that we came across issues on a daily basis, and we used to write, what do we do about it? Legal team will ask us, what immediately we push the question, the answer comes in. So the interaction during this 3 months of our journey, it started somewhere around end of June, right? End of June, there was a meeting where some few people pledged money for the first few listings, right? Many of us were among the first to get registered, and Unnati was among the first few who got registered, and in both the exchanges, right? It happened. But after that, we are not planned for listing because there are issues. Who will bring the money? Where is the money going to come? And today, I'm seeing a lot of NGOs will ask the same question. who is going to bring this money in? If I have to go to my own donor and bring the money in, why should I take on additional responsibility of disclosure, agreements, all this? I will straight away go to my donor. My donor is very happy with me. I've been dealing with him for decades. He will give me the money, right? So why should I get into this SSC, additional responsibility, additional thing? So these are some of the questions which are going to be coming up in the ecosystem, right? And it is important that as a part of the ecosystem, we highlight a lot of points which we will get a chance. Definitely, some questions will come. The vision of SSC, how it could be on a later, years ahead. What should be done so that it becomes attractive? These are all questions which will come, and let's see. We will dwell on these questions during this course of the webinar. So this is what we feel is the whole picture and why we went into it.
No, these are great points, Ramesh sir. I mean, the three key takeaways I would say for me was one, how it does have a huge potential to become one of the most promising funding sources. But in order to make that happen, it's important to build, it's not just capacity building of nonprofits, but also capacity building of the funders, the intermediaries, everyone involved in the process. But at the same time, how do we build that enabling environment, right? Like the support that you were talking about, of the support that you received here, for example, from Trilegal, Unitus, but at the same time from the exchanges as well. How do we keep that momentum going, as we move along for that vision to be realized, the one that you were talking about, but about it becoming, very promising funding source as well. But taking away from there, and when you were also talking about Unnati's decision, to get registered and listed on social stock exchange, I wanted to quickly check in with Surya sir as well. What was the step-by-step process? What did it look like, from Unnati's perspective? And if you could also, while you're walking us through the steps, talk about what were the constituents within these steps as well? What were the key tasks and the activities that Unnati took, within each of these steps? I'm over to you, Surya sir.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So first of all, I think Unnati was well prepared for both registration and listing. I think that was the key element, and naturally I will highlight some of the key requirements for this process. Unlike any normal IPO, this is virtually like a two-step process. I think I'm sure everyone would be aware. One is a registration and then the listing. I think even NGOs plan to do it simultaneously. I think it should be. I would suggest or advise to go with a two steps so that it becomes much more easier. Now, in terms of the basic requirements, I'm not getting into the full list, but I think before NGOs plunge into this process, they have to ensure that their activities are within the 16 key focus areas which has been identified by Niti Aayog and the government. So that's, I think, a number one criteria before getting into it. In relation to that, they have to ensure that the last 3 years, they not only have a track record, 67% of the revenue and expenses are in those key areas. They also naturally have to have a valid 12A, 12AB certification that's from the tax. They should ensure that they have audited financials in place. In terms of compliance, they have to ensure that all their filings are in place, and also they also qualify under the 292 E of SEBI regulation. So these are, I think, I would call the basic tenets which are required at the time of registration. I'll come to what is there at the time of listing, which is a little more elaborate requirements. But I think these aspects, if are complied with, and with all these documentation, the registration process can be done. As Ramesh put it, the exchanges were very cooperative, were very, very quick. And in fact, the registrations happened within a week or two in both the exchanges, both BSE and NSE. And I think really we should commend their, their response and cooperation during that process. In terms of the listing, naturally, as a part of the offer document, many would be aware of a typical IPO requirement in terms of all the disclosures which are required, which are quite elaborate. And I think any NGO which is like, I would say, Unnati, because me working in corporates earlier, I found it really quite pleasantly surprised in terms of how they kept all the documentations, not only relating to financials or filings. They had even things which are required, like your related party disclosures, which are required. All that was readily available. And I think it certainly adds to it if you don't have any tax cases or any pending demands against you. So all this are some basic hygiene which should be required for any NGO to get into the listing process. Then that's also have to have a company secretary on board, and so that he, in terms of ensuring all the filings, etc., are, and that's also a certification which is required at the time of the listing. I would broadly put these are the broad requirements, because I'm not getting into step by step, but in terms of, also as part of the disclosure, you need to have a risk matrix so that any investor or a donor, as in this case, knows what the risks are before whether the project for which he is investing, whether there is a success or there is other risks to that spend. I think these are largely the steps for both registration and listing on an SSE.
Got it. Just a quick follow-up question, Surya sir. So while Unnati was going through this journey, what were some of the challenges that you faced along the way, and how did you sort of address those challenges, with the help of exchanges? Because this could be a good, these challenges would help the nonprofits here on this webinar today as well understand what they could potentially face, while going through this journey, and what could be some structures, they could have in place to address those challenges.
Sure. So I think, as you we did have some challenges, and those challenges were because we were the first mover. We were like a guinea pig to the exchanges and the SEBI in terms of how to treat us, unlike any of those profit organizations or corporates which go for a IPO. The first hurdle we had was in-days. As per the requirement, there was in-days accounting. And since we were the first, whether that's applicable, and like Ramesh already mentioned it, I mean, NGOs don't have that wherewithal or they can't be spending administrative costs in all these type of in-days accounting, etc., which costs money. And so that was number one there. We had to get the clarification, and it took quite some time to get that exemption from the authorities. The second was the LODR. There are certain once you list, there are certain requirements as per the listing regulations of SEBI, which includes a committee to be formed for not only board composition, for remuneration compensation, for investor stakeholders. So again, it took some time to get that exemption. So these were the challenges being the first mover we had. In addition, as in, one of the other requirements was the auditor should have had a peer review. Now, NGOs normally appoint naturally smaller auditors. So, for them to get through a peer review is quite an elaborate process, and not only it's also costly for them. So these are some things which I think authorities have, for us, they gave the exception, but these were, I think, as a first mover, we had to really, get through all this initial doubts. And so thankfully, we would say we have made it easier for the NGOs to follow us in the listing.
Yeah, I think no, I completely understand, sir, because I was just talking to Raymond sir today morning, and he mentioned how there's a term called first mover advantage here. It's the other way around. It's slightly because you're the first here. There are a couple of challenges that you went through, but like you said, I think given that there's been a certain set of steps that you've taken and you've gone through this experience, there's a lot of potential for the nonprofits here to also learn from that experience. And also, just moving on to Rima as well. Rima, given that you've been, you've gone through, you've seen this process, from the outside as an advisor, but also you've seen the process through and through. In bringing the stakeholders here, like Trilegal and Unnati, etc., together as well. Wanted to understand from you what have been your experiences throughout this whole process, and also your key takeaways, from your journey along the way.
Thanks, Lekhya, for this question. Before I start, quick introduction about Unitus Capital. So we are an impact-focused investment bank, and 15 years of operation now. So we raised around $4 billion of capital for impact startups, basically, or large financial institutions. All of them have been for-profit organization, and when this opportunity came, we had been referred by a common stakeholder that, Unnati is getting listed, and if Unitus would be able to help Unnati getting listed, we were kind of excited and anxious because given the fact this is the first transaction and we did not have experience in working with ZP. Of course, there were a lot of apprehension. But then since we've done tons of NCDs and bonds and, ZP is fairly, regulated by the ICDR and LODR guidelines, we thought, you should be able to take this up. So thank you, Ramesh sir and Surya sir, for giving us the opportunity. This has been path-breaking, no doubt, Lekhya. And I think the major challenge was to decipher the regulations, because if you go through the circulars, it's often driven by what SEBI does in a regular a bond or a debenture listing. So and understand as a NGO, it's very difficult to comply with a lot of requirement that is being guided by SEBI in their LODR. So as just previously Surya sir told that a lot of heavy lifting has been done by Unnati in this regard, and which is definitely going to be very, very helpful in case of other NPOs which will be listing themselves in the platform. We went through a lot of queries, questions, and a lot of uncertainties in this regard. So starting from how to get clarifications from the exchanges. Fortunately, both the exchanges has been super cooperative. But I think it is Ramesh sir's zeal and enthusiasm which kind of pushed the whole thing. Has been on it. His entire team has been on it, and they've been super passionate. So any NGO that's listening to us, I think it is really, really important. The first requirement is the passion that Ramesh sir had, and rest will follow. So I think if I have to talk about our experience, I think first step was to understand the regulations. Very important that you go through the circulars in detail. There are a lot of finer points that you need to keep in mind. A second step is to arrange or gather your stakeholders, right? So when I say stakeholders, it is not mandatory to have an advisor or banker like us. If you have an in-house team who can handle it, that's fine. But what is important is to have legal resources. You mandatorily need to have a registrar appointed. You need to have an escrow account open at some point in time. So this is very critical. So I think first step, you get your stakeholders sorted. Now, next step would be to, I'm assuming as an NPO already registered, first listing process is to put together an offer document, which we call a DRHP in a regular, equity parlance. and the DRHP, the document is very, very elaborate. So, it talks about who you are, what you do, what is your intention with the money that you'll be doing, what kind of listing requirements are there, are you having your audits done, how old are your financials, right? So this is very, very important to do a proper draft offer letter, which is, I think in Unnati's case, it's close to 140 pages of a document. Thank you, Ramesh and Trilegal team, for putting it across. Post you submit the offer document to the exchanges, it is there on the platform, it is available for public to see, and the exchanges have a 30 days timeline to come up with their comments. And we saw plenty of observation in piecemeal coming up from both BSE and NSE, and often the comments were totally different. So, it is very important, the data that you are putting in and how quickly you are replying on those points. The couple of points which Surya sir already mentioned, we were in the middle of a lot of uncertainty, because it is, if you go by SEBI's regulations, mandatory to have an index done for a listing, and it was practically impossible for us to convert our financials into index, and when you do, you have to do it for the previous year as well. So that was one major hurdle. There was another hurdle that the regulation says that your financial should not be more than 6 months old. So if I have a 31st March financial, I need to complete my listing before September, which was a very, very aggressive timeline. And we were again in a big, uncertainty that do we get a waiver for that? Or if you don't get a waiver for that, we kind of have to wait for 1 more year to do a conversion into index and then come up with listing. But thankfully, exchanges have been very, very cooperative to grant us the waiver. I think other exchanges, that's a big, other NPOs, that's actually, big hurdle that has been solved by Unnati in this case. So, after we submit those queries and exchanges approve the document that is there on the site, second step is you have to get your registrar sorted, right? You have to get into an agreement with the registrar. You have to get your escrow account open with a designated bank, and then the offer is opened up for listing, and it's a zero coupon bond, which is very, very unique, one of a kind. It's corporatization of donations, basically. Comes up with its own set of reporting requirements, which Unnati team is really, really capable of handling that. So I would say that there were a lot of challenges and hiccups and uncertainties, but I'm glad that we all together have been able to handle it pretty well and are almost at the final stage. And hopefully the issue gets subscribed fully, gets oversubscribed, and people are very, very excited. So thank you so much, again, Ramesh sir, for giving us the opportunity. Happy to answer any question if anyone has. But again, though this seemed very complicated, but I think after Unnati took the heavy load, I'm sure it's going to be very, very smooth for other NGOs to follow. So you should start preparing your internal team very well for doing this. And anytime you want to refer, Unnati's document is on the website. You should definitely refer the document.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Reema, I think, for providing the detailed overview, right, of what your personal journey has been, as well through this process. Talking about subscription as well, I had a question very similar to what Mr. Ram has put down over here in the chat boxes. Do we have an estimate or an idea of the quantum of investors on social stock exchange already and the commitments that they have made? Just given that a lot of nonprofits also want to understand, what's the investment landscape looking like, right, on social stock exchange. So any insights, any perspective over there would be helpful.
Ramesh, would you like to take this up? Reason being, I think it is a very internal study by Unnati that has been done given the investor interest. But my purview has been, Lekhya, it is very important to kind of assess your investors before you go for the listing, right? Because even though this is the first listing, I think it will take some time for the exchange SSC to get matured. So my suggestion would be that speak to your potential investors and motivate them to donate through this platform of social stock exchange, through this particular process, which ensures more transparency. I would be slightly surprised if someone doesn't do that sort of investor market analysis and directly goes for listing, because I personally feel still not marketed or promoted well. So you have to do that internal promotion to your investor, which Unnati has been doing as well. Ramesh sir, in case you want to add something here.
No, you have said it, and at this point of time, I'm not able to reveal anything, so I will keep quiet on that. But yes, it is not easy. Unlike a NPO, which happens outside, the merchant banker does all the work. They have 6 months of time to actually aggressively talk about the company. In our case, we had a lot of issues of just on a daily basis to get the documentation cleared itself was, everyday effort, right? Something comes up today, write to them, get the answer, put it back, put it again. So we didn't have the time to look at marketing and how it was. But God's grace, we are hoping that we will go through the finish line smoothly, because a lot of people have promised us, and they are also coming forward with the promises. So we are looking forward to making it happen. It is going to be tough in the initial phase. It is going to be extremely tough, and that is one of the things which we will talk when the suggestions and all come up, what can be happening and all that. But it's going to be tough for everyone.
One more point, see, the exchanges will not do any marketing or promotion. It is you who need to promote this, right? So I think that's very clearly written even in the NSE side, that exchanges will not do any sort of promotion for this. So yeah.
Whether IPO day, exchanges will not, in the process, they will not interfere.
Yeah.
They're just a platform, a medium, right? It's you who need to arrange for your fundraising.
Yeah. And also just, and this was also a question that was shared by Sumita as well, is what would be the incentives? I mean, if I were to reframe this question slightly differently as well, what were the incentives for these investors, the funders and the donors to explore social stock exchange? And rather than getting into an agreement directly. And this is just based on your conversations with other nonprofits or with other investors as well. I mean, what do you see as incentives for them to, go via social stock exchange?
Okay, so I think the major, and I think number one motivation is the transparency and clarity that NPOs have to mandatorily provide on the exchange, right? That's the supreme reason why you should go get yourself registered and donate through social stock exchange and not directly, because it is obligatory to do a frequent reporting of the work that you are doing. Also, see, currently the instrument ZCZP for NPOs are not available in secondary market, right? Though for for-profit organization, there is a secondary market that exists, but I'm not sure if exchanges are ever coming up with a ZCZP secondary market. But if that comes, that is another motivation where there is actually a secondary market exists for donations. Also, while we're talking about ZCZP, there is another instrument that is a DIB, a development impact bond, which also ensures certain bit of return to the risk taker. It's basically a post facto fundraise. So let's say Unnati has done the work, then go to the exchange and raises the donation. That's basically showing off that, look, we have done the work. Would you like to contribute something to us for the work that we have done? Where else would you be able to showcase your work unless it's a regulated exchange, right? So I think I tell you, Lekhya, see, the majority of problems that we are facing when it comes to donation and grants is the lack of transparency, right? Which is being very well addressed by the exchanges. So I think definitely investors should opt for SSC than a private placement media.
Makes sense, Rima. I think I'm just going to pause the questions and keep them, for towards the end. Otherwise, I think, and also requesting everyone, I think, given we have covered a set of, areas of discussion now, I think it's fine for you to start just putting your questions in the chat box, so I can already see some questions coming through. But before we start answering the questions, Richa, wanted to understand from you, given you have supported Unnati very closely through the process, what, according to you, should be the legal and the regulatory aspects that the nonprofit should be aware of before even considering SSC, and while, of course, going through the registration and listing process as well?
Right. I think just before I begin, I just want to give a brief introduction about our organization. I'm a partner at Trilegal, we're a full service law firm, and we generally get involved in mandates that are private equity, M&A, and I personally do capital markets. I've been doing it for almost 14 years. And I think when the proposal to do this came, I don't think that I have been this excited in a long time for a new transaction when it came, and it came through one of our partners. And when we read about it, of course, we were all, there was very little clarity. We knew that there are certain, apart from the regulations that are available under which is the overarching regulation, there are also norms that are NSE norms that are uploaded on the NSE website, and there are different circulars. So first of all, I think the biggest challenge was to put together all of these different regulations that were available at different platforms together as a group. That was the first step. The second step was then to start reading and analyzing it, and as a group, ask the right question. Because you can read and you can figure out things, but unless you ask the right question, you will not get, you may not land where you're intending to land. So just as a group, and the fact that Ramesh sir, Surya sir was there, Rima ma'am was there, Unitus, all of us put together, the registrars also, because I'll get into the application process in a little bit later, but even the whole subscription process is very different from what happens in IPOs, what is happening in IPO currently. So just putting all of this thought together, initial calls were just all of us together thinking, exchanging thoughts. Then we put together a list of, applicable regulations, which we as a group felt was probably applicable with not so much clarity, but we needed exchanges, inputs on. And both Unitus and Unnati team has been insisting, the exchanges were so, it was outstanding how proactive they were, how they were responding, the number of exemptions they have provided us, because, I think everybody already touched upon the different exemptions that we sought, whether it will be applicable or not. So just the example of having a peer review auditor or converting it to an Ind-AS, the cost of that itself is so high. Now, if as an NGO you want to go and appoint a peer review auditor, or you need to convert your financials into Ind-AS, that money that you're going to spend in doing all of this, you can use that to actually benefit the cause of your NGO, and I think the exchanges understood that really well. And I think in light, and Ramesh sir had a huge role to play in that, because he was constantly in touch with them. We all had calls with them, but he was the one who was spearheading it. He would have calls to them, explain to them that, hey, listen, let us use this money for the cause that we are doing all of this for. And they were on board with it, the exchanges. So broadly, I think just in terms of experience, that is how it went about. We asked, to me personally, I believe that we asked the right questions as a group, and that's why we managed to complete it in the short, in a record time. I've been doing this for almost 15 years. I've drafted many offer documents. I didn't realize drafting an offer document from scratch is going to be so difficult, but it was inputs from the Unitus team, from Ramesh sir. Everybody was just putting it together like day in and day out. We were just at it. I think major legal challenges that, apart from what we already discussed, was what we faced was, of course, in relation to financials. The fact that we will not require for it to get converted into Ind-AS. That sort of eased out the process, not just in terms of cost, but also in terms of timeline, because the whole conversion process itself is a 1-2 month process. So, you're going to just straight up lose 1-2 months in that. So that was one of the major items. The other, according to us, important aspect was, this report on social impact. Now, SEBI has their own format of how you disclose social impact, but NGOs have been preparing it in a format that probably is more palatable to the donors or the information that they have, right? So that has been put together. And when we saw the SEBI format, we realized that it was a lot more detailed. And, we realized that, like each step there was a discovery, and we were like, oh my God. Now, again, does this mean another 15-20 days additional? But we go to the exchanges, they were like, okay, no. To the extent you have information available, and also to just stay consistent with what you have been doing, they allowed us to disclose it in a manner and not go out of our way to just gather information, because they also realized that the way Unnati has been disclosing all the information is actually more than enough for the donors to understand what they're doing, and how much they need to know was adequately disclosed in these documents. So while exchanges were really forthcoming, I think it is commendable how Unnati had also prepared everything, kept everything ready in the right form, so that tomorrow, if whatever question, and somebody is reading the document, they have a question, the answer is already there. There is no back and forth happening. So that also gave, to my mind, a bit of comfort to the stock exchanges. So for the NGOs who have dialed into this call, I think that probably is one of the most important key takeaways, to ensure that whatever your documentation, your day-to-day operational documents are drafted properly, are kept properly when you're going for your registration before you can issue your ZCZP instrument. Those documents and the registration documents are in full and complete form. That would be, according to me, the first step to start before you start initiating from a legal perspective. Of course, from an investment perspective, Rima already highlighted that, just get a sense of the market, how much, who are your donors, who's giving you just a soft commitment of how much they're going to sort of invest and everything. The other challenge we faced was how the whole subscription will happen. Because now in an IPO, it's this process called ASBA, which is all online, all electronic. So people make an application, their account gets blocked online. There is no physical form that happens anymore. But now, for a ZCZP bond on a social stock exchange, the whole EPV platform is not available. So this whole online would not have been possible. So then we went back to the registrar, again spoke to the exchanges, and finally we went back to the old times, like maybe 10-12 before ASBA came, how IPOs used to be at that time, people used to apply. So we went back to the physical form of application. Really commendable for the registrars also to get this done, the whole process. So in the offer document, I know Ramesh sir has shared the link, we drafted the back section in line with the current regulation and the process that was followed earlier on. And in that also everybody had inputs. Again, we exchanged thoughts and shared valuable insights on how the process will work. So anybody who wants to do this must read the back sections also on how the process is going to be. I saw a lot of questions on who's eligible, who are the investors. All of this information is covered in the back section of the document. Who can apply, who cannot apply. When will the form get rejected? What do you have to do to apply in the correct form? So all of these information is provided in a lot more detail. I think the LODR point was really important that Rima covered, so that was another challenge, because the moment you get listed, you have a lot of compliance requirements. So a lot of those were given away. I do want to highlight one point though on these exemptions that were provided in Unnati. I am not sure whether these exemptions would be called law. It may require the NGOs to have a dialogue about these exemptions again, because I don't think that the intention of the exchanges was to have this set out as a law, although a lot there's been a discussion paper out, and probably basis that it's a discussion paper that we out with another amendment or a circular. But in the absence of that, I think it's important to remember that this was a bilateral exchange of information. Of course, this is set precedent, and it's very common in capital markets where in one issuance, if you set a precedent, it sort of gets followed in another. But just to be on a cautious side, I would request that anybody who's going in through this platform, you must have one more engagement with the exchanges to just tell them, hey, listen, we want to follow what Unnati has done, and since you allowed Unnati to do this, I'm assuming that it shouldn't be a problem for you if I also do this. Just put it like that in a way to just get an in principle okay from them, so that they don't think that, although it's not written in law, you're still going ahead and doing it. So that, to my mind, is probably an important point to remember. Apart from that, I think why this product, I'm very hopeful about this product is, like we all discussed, that it provides great transparency. This document is, when you file the draft document, it's available for 21 days for people to provide comments, for the public to provide comments. So this whole process that is happening, there's everybody who's involved in it. It's not a bilateral arrangement where the two people are just coming together. From the regulators, to the donors, to, of course, the NGO, and just public at large. Today, anybody can access for those 21 days. Anybody can access that document and write an email saying, hey, you've disclosed this, I want to understand this. So, we are, as a community, we are all doing this together. So that gives the donors a little bit more comfort. And the other point is, to my mind, from a donor perspective, would be cost. Because in a bilateral arrangement, they will also have to incur some level of cost. Whereas here, they access the document from the website and they provide and they just make an application. So the cost is limited to that, not additional, say they want to do a due diligence or they want to get into the details of the NGO. So they'll have to source all of that bilateral basis. Here it's all available. So that's probably another consideration for the donors to get into it. The third point, which hopefully will attract a larger set of donors, would be this minimum cap, which is of 2 lakhs right now, and this is covered in the discussion papers also. In that, there is a discussion that's happening that the limit should be decreased so that it's available to a wider set of audience. Just like in an IPO, when you say retail means actually the basically category which is not qualified institutional buyers. So the people who want to apply for lesser amount of money, but you get a wider range. So if that change happens, I think that's going to just open doors for insane amount of investments or rather donations into this structure. I think that's mostly what I wanted to cover, just in terms of sense of what this instrument is, the challenges that we face. The items where every NGO needs to be a little bit careful about if they are planning to go ahead and go ahead through this source.
No, that sounds great, Richa. I think you've walked us through the challenges as well as the compliance requirements, all of that. One quick follow-up question there would be that through the journey, there would have been certain tension points, right? Wherein you might have had to go back to exchanges on. What, according to you, were those top 3 tension points, wherein you had to go back to exchanges and you actually got inputs from them so that the nonprofits here know what they should, foresee in their journey as well?
Right. So like I briefly covered, and also Ravi sir and Rima also covered. The most important one is on financial statements. So your financial statements need to be. The requirement for an IPO is that it should not be 6 months old. So here we got an exemption. You can give last 3 years financials. The fact that it had to be converted to an Ind AS form is another requirement for a listed or to be listed entity. Now this is a very, very tedious process. It's a long process. It takes a minimum 1.5 months, and it's a costly process. They provided us exemption for that because we asked them that, hey, listen, we are going to be a listed entity, but to spend this amount of money to get this converted. So exchanges understood and they said, okay, no, we provide an exemption. So if you see the financials that are included, those are not in Ind AS for Unnati. So that this category was one important category. The other category was the social impact presentation that I covered, that every NGO has to prepare. And the fact that then it has to be prepared in a SEBI format when you submit these draft prospectus documents. So they gave an exemption to us for that, because otherwise it would have meant that you go back 3 years and you re-look at all these social impact disclosures that you have made on an ongoing basis, additional items. So they let that pass So that was, to my mind, another exemption. And the fact, maybe I would say maybe a form of physical application, allowing form of physical application in the absence of EVP, and whether if every donor will have an ASBA account, not have an ASBA account, so just keep it simple, apply, give a physical form, everybody fills it and submits their check to the registrar. So making it very, very simple.
That's very helpful, Richa. There is a question, that's been personally shared with me is, what is the eligibility criteria to register on social stock exchange? Would you like to answer that, or I could, Ramesh, sir, you could also feel free to answer that.
Yeah, Ramesh.
Yeah, I think, yeah, sure. I think Surya covered that point.
I think I covered
Yeah.
that in terms of the NGO has to have the activities in the 16 listed as per the Niti Aayog, regulations. Then naturally they have to have the audited financials. They can't be a political organization or a trade organization, religious organization. These are, and then they have to have all the tax certification, that is your 12A, 12AA, 12AB, certificates in place. The track record of 3 years has to be there. And I think these were basic criteria which was required. And then 67% of their revenue and expenses has to be in those 16 areas. I think these were largely the bigger ones for the first step of registration.
Yeah. And just to add on to that as well, at least from what SKI has looked into so far, like while there are 17 eligible sectors that are eligible, and there needs to be 67% of the work done in those particular sectors. However, there's also a beneficiary lens to it, and the beneficiary groups that are basically the underserved and the less privileged population segments. It includes SC, ST, OBC, people with special needs, elderly, children and at-risk adolescents, and any nonprofit that has 67% of their expenditure from the preceding 3 years in towards these beneficiary groups as well are eligible towards this. So I hope. Yeah.
So one more point to add there. So you need to get the registration with SSC done before you can issue these LC instruments. This registration is valid for a year, and you should calculate the time period from start to end as a minimum of 3 to 4 months. So time your registration or renewal of registration accordingly, and because this is another eligibility that I've already covered, that this is an eligibility criteria, but the time period is important because your registration should not expire before you get listed. So time it accordingly.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. Also, there's just an open question, I would say, to all three of you as well, based on the experiences that you've gone through. And now that you've had conversations both on the investor side as well as, with your fellow nonprofit circles as well, what needs to, how do you see SSC evolving, from here on, or needs to evolve, from here on? Is it relaxation of certain criteria? Or, there could be more, right? Like, what are those, let's say, top 3 recommendations from all 3 of you to the SSC Council on how the SSC needs to evolve, in the upcoming years, so that it could make the impact ecosystem more and more and invite more and more nonprofits to be a part of it?
Okay. I'll take that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
It's an open question to all of you. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things which I told you is, any not-for-profit who's there will think, I already have my donor. He's giving me money. Why should I take on all this trouble of getting into SSC and then so many disclosures and continuously, quarterly, half-yearly, yearly, social impact, which is compulsorily has to be done by the NGO in future. at our cost. All these aspects are going to be additional work for an NGO. So why will an NGO come into this? And as on date, if you see, my donor wants to support me in the instrument purchase. They don't get ATG. Some of them are still in the old income tax rules where they do have the benefit of ATG. The new rules which has come, the new form which has come, ATG doesn't exist. But there are still many of them in the old. So these questions will continuously come for an NGO, and they will openly keep asking. The way I look at it is, this is an ecosystem we are building. You are creating an atmosphere where the entire NGO people are looked at without skepticism and with a lot of respect, saying that these are listed and these guys are above board on every aspect. So that is a very, very important element from my side, which so that has to happen. It cannot be said, oh, it will happen. The entire country should behave that way, right? So the authorities, the tax authorities, everybody should be respecting that NGO in that manner. That is what is required on one side. The other side, which I feel very strongly, is today. Earlier days, I don't know. Some of the NGOs will be known. We were, greatly benefited because of it. We had 35 AC, which was 100% exemption on certain areas of work which we used to do, and we were benefited because of the livelihood space. Now, I strongly believe that one of the ways that SSV should evolve in the days to come is to get that kind of benefit into it, so that somebody sitting in Assam will just look at it and say, oh, this is a project I like. I find them in an SSC, so they are good. Let me give that and take 100% exemption kind of thing. So it becomes a very authentic kind of a thing. And for a donor, he is getting a lot of benefit out of it. I believe that this is something which should happen in the course of time. Because third, today, take my word, as an NGO, I'm telling, and this is true for many of them sitting there. We have 10 donor companies, okay? And 10 donor companies want to do audits. It is compulsory for them to do audit under CSR. Their cost is there and they have to do it, right? So what happens? They have to put money and get the audit done. We as NGO, what happens? 10 companies, even if a company takes 10 days, my 100 hours, 100 days of man hours of the entire team is in jeopardy. I don't get time for them to work. So there is so much of pressure. Continuous audit after audit after audit is going on. Now, a CSR company is spending this money of their own to make this audit happen. We are putting all the financials in the SSC. We are putting the social impact report on the SSC. Can a system happen where the government says, CSR, you have done, and this is the same project, it is there, the social impact report is there, financials are there, we will accept that over. If this happens, a lot of companies involved in donations, CSR, etc., will start looking at it differently. So there are small things which can happen and which could make a huge difference to the ecosystem. So I strongly recommend something like 100% tax exemption. Don't lower the limit too much. An SSC is like a platinum card. You cannot give a platinum credit card to everybody, right? You cannot give it to a vegetable vendor a platinum credit card. It is an elite thing. So you keep the amount high, because also there are a lot of costs involved for every aspect of it. Second thing, the person who's giving a lot of money higher amount of money, understands stock market, understands how it works, and is an informed investor. You want to bring in people who are informed investors into this SSC, right? As a donor. So you give them that benefit of treating them in that manner and give them that extra kind of percentage. Keep it high. Let the SSC bring in NGOs who are credible, who are able to show all these aspects. Come in, take a lot of money and go, which will inspire every NGO to do that and become a part of the ecosystem. So somewhere a lot of work has to happen. I see that this will happen. It will take maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but it has to happen in that manner. Because without any benefit to a donor or the NGO, they are not going to be entering this place. They will not come into this ecosystem. And Unnati did it because we felt it is futuristic, and we had people support, like, the Trilegal or Unitus, all of them pro bono coming and helping us. So it was not a cost. We have not spent any big amount of money in the whole process. So it is different. But otherwise, it is huge cost. A cost of listing could be, as I told you, anywhere like 10 lakh rupees. And the subsequent disclosures throughout the year and continuous could be another 10 lakh rupees or more, much more, right? So it is not easy.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points, Ramesh. And I also see that in the chat box, everyone resonating, with the points that you mentioned as well. And I think through this, you've also answered Mr. Sandeep's question also on what are the cost implications to register and list on social stock exchange too. I also have received another question that says, what does the post-listing process look like? I think we've spoken about the registration phase and we've spoken about the listing phase, but for you as well, how are you getting yourself up, for post-listing phase as well now? And what are those steps that the nonprofits here should also have in mind, as part of the post-listing phase?
So the post-listing generally happens from the RTA side. So they get all the money, they evaluate the amounts which have come, it is correct, the application forms are all complete, and then the ZC, ZP instruments are credited into the demat account. And as an NGO, we had to get the NSDL registration done, the IN numbers, the CDSL, all those kind of things have happened, and it's all in place. The agreement with the NSDL, CDSL, all those agreements have been in place. So they will allocate we have issued a 1 rupee bond, a 1 rupee instrument. So 2 crore instruments, right? That way. So the instrument gets credited to the account of the donor, right? Depending on the amount what they have paid. And after that, the money is transferred to us, and then we complete the project. The moment the instrument goes and hits the account of the donor and the money comes to us, the instrument value becomes zero. So that's why it is zero coupon, zero principal. There are various quarterly disclosures, half-yearly and yearly disclosures, which gets ticked off immediately after listing and the credit of the other one. So you need your company secretary in place to be looking into it, the ROC, the GNL2, all those kind of things will happen, and that you have to be ready and you have to be in that place. Some of the exemptions which SEBI has given, which we had to write, and it's all there, is because on day one, if these exemptions were not given by the exchanges and SEBI, we would have become non-compliant. On the day of listing, we would have become non-compliant because the exemptions were not there. But now they have given it, and so all these aspects have been looked into it immediately.
Got it. So that's helpful. The next question that I have over here is, if you look at the whole FPO ecosystem, right, like the farmer producer organizations, the smaller entities, like self-help groups. So there's a question as to given that they're not eligible, for SSC yet, is there a way for them to still take advantage, of this platform and take the benefits of this platform as well? So there's a question over there. If not, then again, that's also just adding on to my previous question as well, is how can SSC evolve to also, enable the FPOs and the SHGs as well in the future?
Yeah, it's a tough question because Hemant sir himself has not answered it. the people who have architecture of these whole thing of themselves not, because they have had their own reservations on these kind of things. So at this point, but he has not ruled it out either. On a later date, we will definitely look into it and see how it can be done. But there are certain areas, because especially I remember Rangde wanted it, Ms. Ram wanted to do this, and they were told because of certain things which they give loan and all those kind of things, it cannot be brought into the SSC framework. But as it evolves and as a lot of these rules get ironed out, I'm sure all of these people should be able to take advantage of that through the SSC. This is what I've heard about. A lot of things like, a lot of people like professional trade bodies are not allowed. Corporate foundations are not allowed today. A lot of people are not part of the SSC today. A lot of people are not allowed there.
Yeah, I believe Raymond sir has joined here as well, so I think he'll also have more thoughts. Yeah, great. So Raymond sir, I've made you the co-host. If you're able to come in, please do come in.
Yeah.
Are you able to hear us? Great, go ahead, sir.
You hear me? Actually,
yes.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Unnati and its team. He's been far generous than what actually the problems and challenges that he has faced. I know it's an Herculean task he has overcome. And like I mentioned to you this morning, that the first mover disadvantage. Okay. And he's smiling over there, saying that he's not had much. Of course, thanks to also Trilegal and Unitus, who had also helped him out. My video is off, right? If I'm not listening. Just a minute, yeah. Yeah. So, like all three participants, Unnati, Unitus, Trilegal, they covered almost everything that is there on the social stock exchange. And this new venture that came out of the vision of the Honorable Finance Minister in July 2019, when she announced that she wants to bring the market to the investor for inclusive growth. That's where the entire thing started. And both the stock exchanges have set up the social stock exchange. And a lot of questions I'm seeing in the chat box that is coming up. All these questions I would like to suggest is that just go to the notification that has been issued, the Gazette notification. This was issued in July, mistaken. That answers July 25th, 2022. All the NPOs who are there online, you go to the source document that gives in black and white what are the eligibilities, what criteria are being followed. So that will solve all your answer all your questions. As far as the funding goes, you see, now I would like to take that question. I wanted to enter in because you spoke about FPO. Right now, who is allowed to register? Those who are charitable or registered as charitable organizations under the Trust Act or the Societies Act or as Section 8 companies. But issue here with the FPO is that what did we form the FPO for? We aggregated them so that they make profit out of their harvest. Now, when it comes to charitable organization, it's a not-for-profit. So there itself it goes. Neither are they registered as charitable organizations, so they do not have this ATG eligibility. So they don't come into this picture of the social stock exchange. So you rule that out. Similar is the case with this SHGs. That's a total different system where we empower them to stand up and earn better and live a better livelihood. That's how where NABARD plays a major role in doing that. As far as the funder's perspective, you see, why should I donate? One of the questions I think is motivation, yes. And like Swami Ramesh said, that there should be some changes, make it more attractive to the donors. Right now, the minimum subscription is 2 lakh. So naturally, it means the person who's willing to contribute 2 lakh as a donation, he knows what he's doing with his money. All right. We want to broad base that. Everybody seized of the problem. See, the best part of the entire social stock exchange is that all of us, the stakeholders who are in the control mechanism, be it SEBI, be it the NSC, be it BSC, we, NABARD, I'm housing the capacity building fund under the social stock exchange. Now I have to increase the capacity, create awareness of all these things. And I must thank Unnati for having gone first and broken the path. Okay. So the teething problem that he's facing, and all the NPOs are going to look at him, and the support that given by Trilegal and Unitus. And that is going to be the reference document. So what they were talking in terms of 10 lakh, around 10 lakh it's going to cost. It is costly. There's no doubt about it. And the NPOs who are out right now into 1:1 connect, and from the funders to their to fund their projects, and they can expand the horizon, such a way. So what do you do by getting into the registration process? Is that first and foremost, the registration gives you a recognition. Tomorrow, if I'm telling anybody that I am registered on the social stock exchange, his worth goes up immediately. And even if he doesn't come up for listing, which is a long drawn process, I'm sure that recognition will attract more capital to him for his funding. Why should I list at present? Because the incentives given for donors is not there. But I always suggest to the NPOs who come to me and talk to me and all that thing, I said, you have a vision and a dream. Dream big. And 5 years down the line, when it comes to funding for these philanthropic activities, the social stock exchange is going to be the way forward. And when the money comes flowing in, it's going to be to those who are registered. Like Ramesh said, somebody sitting in a sun. Why a sun? We may be allowing, of course, that is in the government's purview. They may open the horizon to whoever wants to have whoever has got a demat account can subscribe. So a person sitting in US having a demat account in India, an Indian sitting in US, he will be able to also this thing. So how does he get convinced? He gets convinced because the SSC has recognized that NPO who has been filtered through the entire process of qualification, that the 3 years work, 67% involvement in the 17 odd listed activities under the SDG, as well as the Niti Aayog priority areas where we really want to bring upliftment in the rural areas as well as in the country. So if you have somebody who's certified by the SSC that he or that NPO is going to deliver what they are promised. So there comes the aspect of how does the funder get convinced? Now there is a sort of a fear that, oh, there's going to be a lot of expenditure on these disclosures. But why disclosures? Now, as a funder, when I, NABARD, lends to my activities supporting the NGOs, I am continuously monitoring on a periodic basis. Now on this SSC, I can't do that. So how do I get to know what is the use of my money? So that comes in your disclosure norms. So they are required to tell me that my fund is being used for the purpose for which it was received. Yeah. The auditors come into play. We want to change the terminology from auditor to assessors, because auditors not acceptable terminology, because there's a fear psychosis the moment they come. So the social auditors, we've got the Institute of Social Audit of India, a Section 8 company, and who can be doing this audit business or the assessment is those who have qualified by an examination conducted by the National Institute of Securities Management, which is again an institution close to Mumbai, who conduct these training programs, and only those who are qualified from there can give you this impact assessment. Okay. I'd like to take any questions if anybody has to raise that.
I think so far there is one question that's come to me, sir, and this is open to everyone as well, is what are the different types of fundraising instruments available on SSC? And why did Unnati decide to go ahead with ZCZP specifically?
So I think there are three instruments which are there. One is ZCZP. Then Rimaji talked about the social impact bond and the development impact bond, right? So the easiest today is the ZCZP one, right? The development impact bond is something which is already there. There are a few development impact bonds which have come, but it requires a more mature. It requires somebody who says that I will put in the initial money to the NGO and it will be driven. The program will be driven, and based on that, they will collect the money from the donor. So there's a middle person involved who will take a certain percentage of that entire amount, and who is investing his money into the whole development impact thing, and then he collects it from the original donor. So this is something which will come up in, because what happens is you have to be so clear about the social impact you're creating. The funder has to be accepting it. The person who's projecting and going to give you money and the subsequent donor to that project has to be aligned. So it takes, and you cannot be having 10 people on that kind of thing. You'll have lesser number. So slightly more difficult, and it will require some more thing. I don't know too much about the social impact bond which Rimaji talked about, which is like any other mutual fund kind of a thing. So I have not come across that much on that. But these two I know about it.
Got it. Anything else that Richa, Rima, that you would like to add as well?
I think Ramesh covered it very well, as we were mentioning that the impact bonds are basically a post facto donation. So it largely depends on the success of a project that is undertaken. So I think ZCZP makes it more flexible in terms of, I would say, regulations and compliance, because once you receive the amount, you get to deploy that in the project, vis-a-vis a DIB, which is basically you complete a project and then raise money. So onboarding a third party becomes very difficult, who basically takes the major share of risk without an assurance that the project will be successfully completed. For for-profit companies, there are multiple other products that's there. There's also a secondary market that's available. But at this point, I think we collaboratively decided to go ahead with the ZCZP instrument, because that seemed the most suitable for the project Unnati was undertaking.
Got it, Rima. Thank you. I think the next question is on social audit. There's a question on who could be the auditors, the social auditors. Second, what are the components of the social audit as well? Is it financial? What does non-financial include? So just, I think if one of you could cover the whole social audit aspect, that would be helpful.
We'll take it, and then I can add. Yeah. Raymond, sir?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, the social audit function can be done only by those who are qualified and passed out the NISM training program that has been conducted for the social audit purpose. Once you get that, then you're certified to do this audit. We are seized of the matter that because there are around 17 activities that are covered, so an auditor should also be well versed with those areas of the function, the social function that is required. So that is being covered and modified in the course curriculum that is there. It's a program. I think most of the chartered accountants have completed that list of about more than around 3,000 who have cleared that test. a majority of them are chartered accountants. So they've added that to the qualification of CA. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So it is a work in progress. What happens is, first of all, the financial audit and the social audit are not connected. Let's understand that the financial audit is already in place in every
independent
aspect
of each other.
It is independent, so that is different. So it's not combined. The social audit does only social audit, talks about the outcome / impact. I am using this word continuously, outcome / impact, because there is a problem in the NGO ecosystem right now. Many of the things which are, some of the word can be used as impact, some of the times it is outcome, because it is very, very difficult. There will be many NGOs who are working and who will say that I cannot show impact so fast, right? So my suggestion to many of the NGOs is very clearly identify outcomes. Now, you cannot say that I am doing children's education from first standard to 10th standard, and the outcome or impact can be seen only when they complete the 10th standard. No, it cannot. It will be questioned. So such things, when every year you are doing, what is the outcome of that funding? Those kind of things have to be in place. You'll have to be very clear on how you're going to define your outcome and all. These auditors are going to be appointed, in the sense they are all people who will come from the SRO, all those people who are there, certified, etc. And they will, that money, the payment for that social audit will have to be borne by the NGO. It could take 1 month, 2 months, depending on the project, and it could involve people have to travel, means they will, obviously, it is a costly thing. It is not going to be very cheap. This year, luckily, because the auditors were not in place, they have accepted the NGO's own impact report and declaration. But next year, starting April, we have, as Unnati, we have to produce the social impact report for the previous year. So this is what it is, if I have answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've answered the question well. I don't think we have any more questions over here, but in the meantime, I'm just one last call, in case you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat box. But Raymond sir, I think before you joined, we were briefly discussing the various barriers, right, that both the sides of the ecosystem could face, the non-profit and the for-profits, but as well as the funders and the investors. So from your perspective, now that you've been sort of in communication with both sides of the ecosystem, wanted to understand from you, what barriers do you, what kind of questions or apprehensions that you're seeing various stakeholders having, when it comes to social stock exchange?
Yeah. See, first of all, this is a total new area. Okay. There is a corporate sector which is well versed with the IPOs and money raising there and trading. This is a sector where there is no trading, and an NPO who doesn't have any clue about the stock exchange, we are bringing them into this formal system. Their fear psychosis is looming very, very large, because one of the criteria is that you have to have a listing size of 1 crore minimum. It can go above that. But when it is 1 crore, and then to make it a success, you have to have 75% subscription. Now, my fear is, if 75% doesn't come in, then what? Like Ramesh said, that he has to already go and tie up with the funders so that my thing becomes a success. Then why come to the social stock exchange, right? So that is a constant. If I do this way, if I don't get 75, the feedback that I get is that they are really worried about if the 75% doesn't come in. Now, what happens? They lose their recognition. Huh? That fear is there. That is a massive, massive fear which is on their head, saying that if I don't get success. Now, the environment is such that all of us want to make it a success. The government has announced it. The stock exchange is having a transfer mechanism. the debate, this circulation paper that was put in for discussion also was suggesting bringing down the quantum of subscription to affordable this thing. Because see, one thing one should understand is the fact that the donations, this is actually a donation. So we give a fancy name like zero coupon, zero principal bond. What does the coupon means? It's an interest rate. And principal means that zero principal means that money doesn't come back. So you don't expect, other than the satisfaction that the achievement of the objectives that has been given during the fundraising document, that will be achieved. That is the only thing that will motivate a person to do it. Of course, if the government does, the CBT does give us the incentive of ATG and CSR funding, then the money will flow. Then I don't think the NPO should be having a worry. All of us are seized of this problem. Hopefully, if that happens, it will be wonderful that will happen. And I think all the NPOs who are there in the listing are still clamoring for such a concession that, frankly speaking, yes, I do agree with the contention because of the fact that if the NPO who's already ATG compliant, ATG certificate, if he gets the money directly, he can issue a certificate, and the donor gets the money benefit of that of the income tax, right? Then when you're routing it through the ZCZP, through the social stock exchange, I find it a little bit odd. So maybe I feel there are some safeguards which the government must be wanting to take it, because a lot of loopholes. So trading may not take place, because once if they do give you a concession or by way of some of the benefits, then you cannot trade. Simple. You have taken the benefit, I can't transfer that benefit to somebody else. So that is one of the issues that will be there for the future. Hopefully it will come in. That fear will go off if the government does come about with that thing. Otherwise, we all want it to be successful. We want to show the world. In fact, we were wanting in terms of the G20 time itself to complete it. But maybe in December, we should be having a clutch of NPOs who are going to be there on the front line, who have done it, and will motivate the remaining to come. That's what I want to do.
No, I think that's a great point, and I think that's a great reflection, for all of us to also think. It's like my question has now led to more questions, for the ecosystem and for the SSC Council as well. I think that's mostly it. Those were the questions from my side, and those were the questions that I could see from the chat box as well. I think Unnati team has been very kind to answer the questions in the chat box as well as much as possible. I wanted to, before I just end the session, I want to check, from all of you, any parting thoughts, any advice, any recommendations that you have for nonprofits over here, not only nonprofits, but also funders, because this recording is going to go up, after this webinar as well. Do you have any parting recommendations, advice for the funders, for the nonprofits, for intermediaries, who will be involved through the process, just also learning from some of the challenges that you've faced, as well as some of the best practices, that you have adopted as well. So I wanted to hear from all of you, any parting thoughts that you want to leave our audience with. Ramesh sir, if you want to just kick it off, please do so.
So each is a different vertical. So I would only tell the NGOs that it may be a lot of trouble, but at least, like Raymond sir said, get yourself registered at least first, and the ecosystem may change very fast. Let me just put a fear factor onto every NGO, just to create that fear factor. What if, suppose 2 years later, the government says that you cannot raise money if you're not there on the SSC, right? Or you will not get CSR funding if you're not there on the SSC. Things like that, if it happens, because if the government decides that this is one of the most credible manners to bring in donations into the system, into the whole system, and then they push you hard on these things. For example, today, a Darpan ID is so important, right? You have a CSR form which has to be filled. So there are many restrictions which are coming regularly, continuously happening. What if 2 years down the line, an NGO can definitely say, oh, at that time I will get myself registered. It can happen. But being proactive, thinking of the future, bringing in already now, and then getting the whole thing geared up is a way to look at it. This is my suggestion to any NGO today. The funder, I am saying that it is tough. It's word of mouth which has to move. Each one inspires the other to donate. It's not going to be easy, and somebody has to a donor has to consciously think that a small portion of my donation will go into this ecosystem, because this is good for the country. Then it will happen. If the donor says, my money is there, I'm giving to credible organization, I know this organization, I have a touch and feel of the organization, I have been involved with this organization for 10 years, 20 years, so I don't know why I should go to the SSC. If that kind of a thought comes into the donor's mindset, the ecosystem will not flourish. The ecosystem has to flourish means he should today decide saying that 10% of my donation, let it go to SSC. Something like that. Then you are creating that ecosystem. People will come. Because when I see money, then I will come to the SSC. Otherwise, why should I come? Right? So these are two different, and from the authority's point of view, my point is make it very strong. Make it, give it a stamp of credibility wherever possible. Bring in, if you are an NGO, you are in SSC, you will get these benefits from the government of India. Whatever it could be. And then as a donor, bring in this 100% tax exemption kind of things. Those are some of the things which I would suggest the authorities to recognize an NGO with. Because today we have heard, income tax also you get certificates, right? If you are a regular taxpayer, you are getting certificates today, right? So an NGO must get a certificate from the authorities, whether it is income tax, whether it is GST, whether it is saying that you are compliant, you are fantastic, and extend it to wherever possible. I don't know what other possibilities are there, but anyhow, so some things have to flow in.
Yeah, I think I'll just add to it. I was reading something which says that social stock exchange in many countries have not been that successful. I think it's a collective onus on not only on the NGOs, but also on the investor community to make this platform very successful. I mean, if I have to make a donation individually, I'll always prefer a structured, regulated route like an exchange than doing it directly, because the exchange would provide me all the information and I have more clarity on the whereabouts of my money. See, my purpose is that my money should make an ultimate difference to someone out there. And what better route can someone offer me than exchange? So NPOs and investor community should work together to make this platform as robust as possible and as successful as possible. While there are a lot of initial pain points, but trust me, Unnati has solved a major aspect of it. And I'm not saying it's going to be a cakewalk, but it's going to be more smoother than it had been for Unnati, right? So I would strongly recommend that collectively we should make this, Indian social stock exchange a very successful medium for raising donations.
I think just to add to both what Ramesh sir and Johan said, the other points, of course, we're talking about from the time you start the process. I think what is also important that as you go along, begin the work. Of course, I'll speak as a lawyer, but don't begin the work once you decide to go ahead with the issuance. Keep your paperwork clean, keep everything ready, whatever as you go, everything should be sorted. I think it was slightly less complicated for us because Unnati had, we used to ask for a document or ask for information and it used to be available within half an hour, 45 minutes. So I think if that organization is done as you go along, it will reduce at least 50% of your work and unnecessary back and forth when you begin the process of listing. So, start early, just keep everything clean and keep everything ready and all information handy. I think that's one additional point I'd like to.
Great. I think Raymond sir, if you could end it with your words as well. You're on mute, sir. So you may have to just unmute.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to ask the NPO, where do you want to see yourself 10 years down the line?
I think folks in the chat box should just, I think you should just start firing it right away.
So, do you want to miss the bus? 5 years down the line, let me tell you, this is going to be the way of raising of funds. So don't miss the bus. Think big, have a dream, and like Trilegal and Rima also mentioned, be ready. See, for everything, it is step by step. So as you go more up the steps, you'll become more professional. Costs will come down. Initially, right now, there are only a few players who have come in, and they've also not been able to price the document in a more economic way. And as they find that this is not going to be a profit-making business, so I'm sure there's going to be more and more coming with the charitable viewpoint, and the cost will come down drastically. We'll be there. And again, the government is interested, the exchanges are interested, the regulator is interested to make this happen. We want to show the world that in other places when it could not happen for various other reasons, we can make it. Okay, when we can land on the moon, what is this? All the best.
Great words, Raymond. I think that's a great way to end the session. Thank you so much, everyone, especially Ramesh sir, Surya, Raymond, Richa, and Rima for being so open and sharing your experiences with us. And almost 2 hours, right? I'm glad we spend so much time just talking about this, since it's so important. I really like ending every webinar with a commitment, and the commitment that I make over here today is that Ramesh sir would love to collaborate with you, given SKI is a public goods platform. We would love to collaborate with all of you over here to actually turn all the discussions that we have had over here today, along with the experiences that you have faced, into a guidebook or a toolkit, for any nonprofit tomorrow to take it and apply it, for themselves. So to all the folks here over here today in this webinar, please watch out for a guidebook in the month of December that we will be collaborating with Unnati, Trilegal, and Unitus on. I would also like to thank India Partner Network, which is a Sattva initiative consisting of 890 nonprofits, and it's on its primary mission to equip these nonprofits with the resources, the network, and the visibility that they need to. And the membership is absolutely free. So if you would like to join this network of 900 plus organizations with us, please feel free to drop us a note. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Please watch out for future webinars by Sattva Knowledge Institute, as well as our knowledge reports that are out in the ecosystem. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening ahead. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.